early here in Arizona, and we have the Pirate Broadcast. And we're live now with Rob. And I just want to thank you so much if you're joining us live. If you're not joining us live and you're joining us to replay, just type in replay and leave your comments below. And I just love the opportunity to have a conversation with you and talk about what Rob is doing and why he's doing it. Interesting people doing interesting things here on the Pirate Broadcast. Rob, welcome to the show. How are you this fine day?
Hey, Russ, great for having me, or thank you for having me. No, I'm doing great. Yourself?
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to let everyone know that they can find you at the Drunken Grape, and I wanted to dive in and talk about the Drunken Grape, which is I love the domain name, by the way.
Thanks.
It's just fascinating for a sommelier. And I didn't realize, I know that wine had sommeliers, but I didn't realize that beer also had sommeliers. So tell us the backstory on the Drunken Grape and how you got into the industry and what you're doing right now for events and activities.
Well, I was at a crossroads about 10 years ago. I went back into the hospitality business part-time. I was actually bartending in a hotel, the Ottawa Marriott Hotel, which I still work there occasionally. And I was in the IT business, but before that, I actually had started my career at a university in the cruise line business. So it was tied to hospitality by nature. So anyway, I had a company.
Wait. I want to capture this because you're in the hospitality, you're in IT, and then you're in the cruise industry, which is entertainment for the most part, right?
Right, and that was part of the department I was in. And long story short, I started with that career in hospitality at a university, and then I wanted to move off, and I went into IT for about 5 years, and I got burned by a partner in the end. So we had to split up the company, and I was at a crossroads. So part of that was a lot of project management. So I was looking at studying project management at the time. So what got me started into the education side of wine is my late father sat me down. He used to be a pretty prolific wine and beer maker himself. I used to grow up with all these home brews and all these other concoctions he made. And he had a lot of books on the subject as well. He was quite learned on it. And he looked at me and said, why do you want to go into a beaten path? Why don't you go study the wine world or get into the wine world instead? And it's probably the first time I really listened to him on career advice. Actually worked out. So it's I have a lot to contribute or a lot to thank him for with that side of the influence of getting into the field. And from there I took courses, got up to my WSET advanced certification, started working with it professionally, and was working with an events company called the Drunken Grape. No, sorry, not the Drunken Grape, Groovy Grapes at the time. So I'd worked with them for a while, and in the end, the owner wanted to pack it up. He wasn't sure really what he wanted to do, and he had other interests, and he had a long run with it, and I think his wife has like 4 children now, so they were tied up with a lot of things. So I set out to open up my own business, and I was struggling for a name. I was going to name it Bacchus or Dionysus, after the Greek or Roman god of wine. And one day over Thanksgiving dinner, just over 4 years ago, my stepmother turned to me and said, why don't you name it the Drunken Grape? We started laughing. I said, there's no chance in hell this name's even available. And sure enough, the name was available for a business name in Canada. Then the .ca was available. The .com was tied up with someone else. Eventually I registered the mark. So I actually own the name, the Drunken Grape. And the person dropped the .com off, and I bought it on back order for like $9. And that's sort of how the back end of that started. It was kind of cool. But it's been an exciting road. I mean, I'm still in a lot of ways in my early stages of business. I mean, when you're in business 4 years, it's still a child, and there's a lot of work to do.
Well, and we talked earlier before, this episode here, and talking about the idea that there are a lot of wineries and there are a lot of people that are completely unaware of what you can do around events and activities and understanding the different wines and learning about it. And there's an educational process that goes along with that. Not only that, with beer as well. And what you're doing with these events and education tying that together, I think, is unique. And also, highlighting with videos some of the activities that the wineries are doing. I know you've seen, you've done some video, and it's amazing work that you've created. And I
Oh,
think
thank you.
there's a lot of room for that. There's a lot of room for, because I've always been, that's half the reason I started the Pirate Broadcast, is to highlight other people doing interesting things, right? And
That makes sense. Yeah, it's a cool concept, the pirate broadcast.
it's like, okay, well, let's highlight some of these people, just like you're highlighting wineries or breweries, right?
Well, a lot of the cases too, the big issue is the industry is still largely mired, partly in the past. And I think things like trade shows to have their place moving forward, particularly if they involve winning awards. You hang a medal saying that you were first, second, or third in the world or internationally, or some big international competition on tasting, your product wins, then it's going to help move it off the shelves. It's going to really help leverage it and be at least a 10x multiplier, just to use that kind of the phrasing. But the other problem with most conventional trade shows, if they don't offer those accolades, is often it's a big sunk cost. So, they're turning around and spending often about 30 grand for a weekend, because by the time you rent the space, and even a small 6x6 space costs thousands upon thousands of dollars without it even being staffed. That's just for the rental of the space in a trade show.
Yeah.
And your story's limited, because even if they do videography at a trade show, often they'll just capture you and capture maybe 12 or 20 other booths in a short branding video that they put out. It's really about marketing what they offer for the next expo or the next event. I found a lot of people really weren't doing a lot in the video space. So I had a pretty good background on going on set and stage, being an assistant cruise director in the cruise line industry, and moving forward, having done TV spots with first Groovy Grapes, and then for my own business, The Drunken Grape, just here locally on TV. So I was used to being on that type of platform already. And a lot of people, I think, wait until either they're really, really super educated in something, where they have basically the PhD equivalent, which would be like your master of wine, or in the service side, the master sommelier in my world. But there was very little presence on really bringing the story of wineries and breweries to life in video from somebody who had actually studied the fields, got educated in it, and decided to deliver it to the public.
Well, and what I find fascinating, and here's the reason why I love doing this show, is if you look back and you connect the dots on the IT industry, so you have the technology down to where you can actually tie this together. You have the cruise industry that allows you the opportunity to see how entertainment can come together for a subject, and how that can be pulled in, and how you can pull people into the idea. And then you have, the skill set in being on screen, right? So all of a sudden you brought all of those historical events together to create what is now the Drunken Grape and moving forward. So
True. I never really thought of it. I always felt that was the essence of it, but I think you put it in words better than I've ever really described it to somebody. But it's true. And I think what we have to look at is a commonality sometimes in your background to get to the place where you probably should be career-wise, life-wise, or business-wise. And, we're always battling in some area to achieve that. I think that's life's unfulfilled journey often in the end, is you're always trying to finalize something in the end, right? But I think it's more
about the journey, though.
It is all about the journey.
It's all about the journey. And here's what I think if we could take one thing away from this show today, is the fact that you're a perfect example of the accumulation of experience, different experiences coming together to develop an idea that works for you. It's your idea. You've gone through the education of understanding wine and beer and spirits and everything that goes along with that, along with the entertainment, the IT, the video, everything else. It's the accumulation of your journey that's coming to fruition, and just finalizing this Drunken Grape episode here.
Yeah, I think it's true. What you're saying there is very accurate. I think for anybody that gets at least on the right path, and you see a lot of people here on LinkedIn doing some amazing things.
Yeah.
It is a culmination of experience, and you take a look at a lot of the backgrounds of some terrific. I guess we'll use the word influencer, but people who've actually got a very strong presence on the platform. They're doing a lot of things, and it's congruent with what they do business wise or career wise. You can see in the back engine when you read, you can start to see where things correlate.
Yeah. Yeah. There is and I think Steve Jobs said it. You can't see it connecting the dots forward. You have to connect the dots looking backward.
Well, it's an old saying too, right? History repeats itself.
Yeah, it does. It does. It really does. And also, I think what's really beautiful about this is that we also get to understand that we're all the same. You know, we go through our journey, we bounce off walls. You know, IT to wine is a very big stretch, right? And so you have to admit, cruise industry, you know, wine a little closer. However, it's just that little thing that you look at and you think, wow, that's fascinating. That is incredibly fascinating. And I'm just fascinated by it. And I just appreciate you being on the show, Rob. And thank you so much for being here. And
That's
I want
awesome.
to also thank some of the people on the feed, Jordan, Kenyatta, Sherry, man, Citra, Brenda. You know, there's people here watching this thing, and I'm humbled all the time by this because, I mean, I've been doing this type of work, you know, in broadcast. I've been in advertising since '85, and so all of the different projects that I've developed over the time, you know, that we couldn't have done this 5 years ago, you know,
That's true.
and 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 it's just so amazing right now that we're at this point in history where you can go out and with a phone, you can create, you can develop, you can deliver, you can produce. And that's the whole essence of the pirate broadcast is we don't need permission to do this. No permission needed, right?
That's true.
So we fire up our phone, we fire up our computer, we fire up our connection, and as long as we have internet and a screen, we can produce content. And I think that's important for us to understand is LinkedIn is such a fabulous community for connecting with people like yourself. You know, you're associated with, you know, I think I met you through Jay Andrews,
Yeah, yeah.
that
No,
I've
and I
had on
met
the
Jay
show as
years
well.
ago here in
And it's
Ottawa.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, so you're in the neighborhood. You can actually go have coffee with him. So
we do sometimes. Yeah, no, I used to see Jay a lot, but you know, life's busy right now for both of us, so we
yeah,
come across each other sparingly, and we're definitely good friends. Just
yeah.
outside of the platform, which is neat.
Well, I've made some terrific, very deep friendships through LinkedIn, and people, you know, LinkedIn is only a tool. It's a tool for conversation. It's a tool for building community. It's a tool for, you know, it's much more than finding a job. It's building relationships, you know, and if I were to arrive in your neighborhood, I would probably reach out and say, "Hey, let's go have coffee. Let's have lunch or something like that, or a
Yeah,
glass of wine."
that'd be awesome. I'd love that. But it's true. It's you think about it. You know, I remember going back to the IT business again, selling large projectors that did video conferencing or had a video feed from 3M mounted on the ceilings in a projector-like style for
Uh-huh.
video conferencing. And before there was so much equipment. I mean, I don't know the technical detail that goes into that,
Yeah.
but you look at what we can do now with streaming and video conferencing, whether it's a Zoom call or we're through here on StreamYard on the live LinkedIn feed. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And you're right. And a platform like LinkedIn, I've been able to communicate with people around the world that I never in a million years would have been able to reach to. And speaking of the business front, I mean, just to do a branding exercise of a video, imagine how many tens of thousands, if not
Oh,
hundreds of thousands, that would have cost you back 20 years ago.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible how far we've come.
Yeah. So talking about going forward, I know you have some strategies in place for where you want to take the Drunken Grape and where you want to go with your activities, and you know, highlighting some of these wineries and some of these locations that are amazing. So talk to us about what is going to take place for Rob in the next 3 to 5 years. What's your
Well,
vision, Rob? Take us there.
I definitely, in 3 to 5 years, definitely want to have a good command nationally, moving internationally into that part of the world, into the videography world. I mean, right now there's so much, even regionally or provincially here in Ontario, which would be like a state in the States, same kind of breakdown
Mhm.
as far as territory. In Ontario alone, we have 3 really prolific wine producing regions. Most of
Yeah.
it's around the Great Lakes area. In fact, almost all of it is. But it's just so much going on and some amazing wines coming out of there. And then, of course, in Western Canada, you get into British Columbia, you get wines of the same kind of grade that you're going to find in places like Oregon. So there's just so much going
Yeah.
on. And the impetus, even in North America, the US is what, the 4th largest producer of wine in the world. If you removed California alone as its own country, I believe it's still 4th as a producer in the world, maybe 5th now, but it's just staggering what's available. And, it's an exciting piece of business just because the amount of the stories that go into each winery are just amazing. You know,
It's nice. It's nice to watch. What I love to see, I used to go to the Spring Barrel over in Washington, Central Washington.
okay, that's cool.
And the diversity in the wineries was night and day. I mean, from mom and pop with a couple of barrels in a garage to multi-million-dollar estates,
Yeah, literally
looking at
sitting
them.
on an expanse of hundreds of acres of
Yeah.
vines all around them. Oh yeah, if not thousands. It's insane. What's
Yeah.
out there?
And the beauty of it is, you could take something and you can create something from, that came from a seed. It's just a seed of an idea, growing grapes. I used to have grapes when I lived in Oregon. I had a couple of, I don't know, probably 100 yards, 2 rows of 100 yards of grapes, mature grapes in an
That's
orchard.
very cool.
And
That's
and
awesome.
I had a lot of friends that got into wine, uh, creating wine. I'm sure there's a better term for it. It's just like, you know, but
Viticulture.
yeah, yeah, viticulture. And it's it's just it just blows my mind. I mean, it's the process, and I've had friends that develop, you know, create beer. In fact, my son used to make beer.
Yeah,
It's
brewing is one of those things that's actually, if you think about the two business models, um, it's a waiting game. If you're setting up a new winery, you better have a lot of resources
yeah,
to expand it, have an excellent winemaker, and a whole myriad of things that go into a winery. Plus, you could have 2 seasons of really bad weather to start, and that could just wipe you out. You just don't know because, vintage to
yeah,
vintage, weather is very different year to year. With a brewery, on the other
yeah,
hand, you can get up and you can just rent an old warehouse. A lot of them take things like old dairy equipment and convert it for brewing, and
yeah,
get old coffee roasters to use it to kiln the roast the grains or the malts. It's the cost of entry is a lot lower, and the ability to turn around a product is much quicker. So that's the advantage of getting into a brewery. But if you can get into an established winery or take over a winery or develop a concept that really flies,
yeah.
there's in truth a lot more money in wine. And it's just which business model do you want to go and what's your interests really. But viticulture is a massive amount of work because you have the whole outdoors of the field and agriculture
Yeah.
and farming involved as well.
Well, a lot of wineries buy their grapes and they process their grapes from other
Yeah, they do that
vineyards.
too. That's true.
Yeah. So I was just fascinated by the diversity in what people were doing and accomplishing. And there's a ton of, I mean, the tourism industry alone was just phenomenal. I was just watching it. All the hotels are booked. They got buses riding around. You got
Oh yeah,
all this food
wine
vendors
tourists and
out,
everything else. Absolutely.
and having had a little experience in farming, I understood what it takes to grow grapes and mature the vines and everything that goes along with that. And it's just a long process, whereas
Well, yeah,
some of these,
it is. It really is. I mean,
yeah,
you plant your first vines, it's going to be 3 years before the berry sets produce the proper fruit, even for just your first vintage of wine.
yeah,
And then you're going to have to bank on the fact that it's probably another 15 years on average to start getting true maturity of fruit. And it could even be double that depending on the varietal.
yeah,
So it's a long process. And often you see these wineries, some of these great wineries like Trimbach out of Alsace, for instance, has been I think they're in the 13th generation of the winery being in the family. It's like a 300-year legacy so far.
Wow.
So some of these massive powerhouses have been around literally that long.
Yeah.
And again, it's a definitely very costly to start up a winery and move
Yeah.
forward with it. But the potential can be huge if you're right off to the right concept, the right site, the right location, right grapes.
And that's kind of the way it is with any business, It's like
That's
it's like
true.
you developing video highlighting some of these vineyards and some of the things that you know you have to talk to the right person in order number one to get the right product, because you have to have somebody that's willing to work with you and produce the right result that highlights them in the best possible light. And
Yeah, that's true. And usually the market for the market for the drunken grape and the videos that I've been doing are more on the small to mid-sized scale too, right? Because
uh
if you think about it, the massive wineries, they're probably going to fly in a couple celebrities to do it. Somebody like Gallo, it could be a billion-dollar winery, but
the most
even the ones,
interesting man in the world.
yeah, and even the ones that are doing well and they're into the tens of millions. I mean, in a lot of cases, you're still dealing with the owner directly,
Yeah, yeah.
which is also cool because you meet them. In the case of when I went down to Henry of Pelham Family Estate Winery, it's three brothers that run it now. Their family started it, or this side of the family started the modern era of the winery, something like
Uh-huh.
33 years ago. And the brothers have taken it over. But it's neat to sit down with them because, well, the one that I know, Daniel, just the amount of energy and enthusiasm he has. He's talking to me about just adding to the production facility. You can just see rays of passion and joy
Right,
coming out of him. And
right.
that's neat to see when you're dealing with the people who have actually created it, or in this case, had a huge hand growing up in it and helping create it for the family for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It,
You see this legacy part develop as well in a lot of
well,
these wineries.
and it's fascinating because a lot of these people, they do have a passion for it, and you have to have a passion for it because there's a huge opportunity. Like you said, a couple of bad seasons, drought, everything else that goes along with it. It could turn south very quickly, right? It could go bad. And if you have the passion for it, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out a way to deal with it. There's always a way to make a unique opportunity. It's like opportunities are found in challenges, right?
That's
So
true.
anytime you're challenged really hard, just like the decision to go into wine, based on what your father said, it's like IT to wine is a stretch,
No,
right?
no, it was at one point. At one point I'd wondered for a while how that even fit into the picture. And you're right; it has some effect now for sure.
Yeah.
And particularly from managing projects and having consultants on projects, there's a structure that you bring to things
Uh-huh.
that you do too.
Well, there's a chain of events that have to take place in order to find some sense of accomplishment or the criteria for success, right? And
That's true.
you don't know exactly what it is. However, you know the steps that are in place. And if you have experience with project management, is that you can actually initiate those steps and plan for those things to take place, and like making phone calls and following up and taking video and editing and all of these things that go into the process. And that can only come over time and experience, and so now where you are right now is a unique place, which I think is ripe for opportunity, if I can use the grape analogy, ripe
Yeah,
for
yeah,
opportunity to to to
good
plant,
analogy.
plant that seed and make sure that you're developing these smaller wineries, highlighting the industry and bringing something. If you go into the tourism bureaus and you look at some of the things that they're doing, highlighting, because that's tourism dollars and that's huge. And so I think I could see you very easily sliding into that space and
Yeah,
making it
that's a
work.
space I'm starting to look at quite extensively. I mean, the thing for video is it took a while to build. I mean, we really just built the sellable car. in the sense of, for events is different, because events you can just be called up and you can go in and you can consult, or you can present. It could be a tasting for 50 people, 100, 200. You just scale it to the amount of members you need that are trained in the wine world, in the wine and beer world, and you execute it. And there we often shoot branding videos for them as well. So it's a nice little give back. But on the scale, on the sense of the video side, it's a process to build and develop as well. And you're right, there's sorts of things you learn along the way. You realize how long it takes a good editor to really clean things up in the end, if you want it on a professional grade. So there's a lot of factors to consider in that development as well. But it's certainly the background from IT and having a hand in the project management aspects directly helps with that, just helps with the project planning itself. You know, you first get a prototype, and then you have to find the proper site, and then you realize, okay, that's the first prototype. We got to go and launch a second or a third prototype. And I did a brewery prototype as well, and you have to build the car before you can sell it. It's like engineering and design.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating because after you've shot a few videos and you understand, location, light,
time of day, there's a billion factors that go on.
And then you realize, okay, I can see how a movie could cost $1 million to make.
Oh yeah. Well, and then you see the amount of work that goes into a 2.5 minute video if you want to clean it up professionally. I know the last one we aired for Henry of Pelham Family Estate Winery, there was probably about 50 hours just in the back end to edit it from the actual filming that we took on site. And of course, there's the time to get down there, the time to plan it. And it's also having knowledge in the field. This isn't something you could just jump into. And
well, you have the product knowledge, and I think
you definitely have to have the product knowledge to some competent level to do it. Plus the ability to go on camera. And a lot of people, it's just whether my friend Kurt Mercadante has a great comment. He goes, follow your superpowers. I believe one of mine is being able to present live and really express it with passion and further, and a bit of joy, and sometimes a little bit of humor, and making it personable, and not to the effect of like you're sitting in an actual university lecture, because that's the last thing anybody thinks of. You think of the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, in the classroom is Bueller, Cameron,
Bueller.
Yeah, Bueller. It's just you want to go the opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, now you're a sommelier and a pirate. So you can go out and do anything.
Yeah, the ship of the pirate broadcast. It's fantastic.
It's brilliant. And I love the fact that you're here. I appreciate you and all of the people, Jennifer, Arcot, Kenyatta, we mentioned, who else is in here? Maureen, Angie, Jerry. I mean, there's a ton of people that are joining us, and I know it's a small, quaint community we have here. However, the ability and the opportunity to do what we're doing digitally, Rob, is going to take us miles. Incredible. And we're on the tip of the iceberg, I believe. And if we just keep creating, keep innovating, keep doing things that are helping others, it always seems to return in spades. So it's like it grows. It just grows. It's like planting that seed. It takes some time. It's like the vine grows and it matures and it develops. And we all start at zero. So if you're thinking about starting something and you want to test it out, talk to people that are actually doing it. Identify what it is that needs to be done. And what I always talk about is find the grout between the bricks that hold it together. Because if you find your curiosity and you're kind of observant, you could kind of discover things that are missing between, what exists today and what you could potentially help out with in the future. And if you're helpful, it'll work. It always does.
It goes back to that one word I always think of as congruency. It's got to be congruent with you.
Yeah.
If your passion is music, why are you in a lab somewhere working? Or if your passion is sport, be out there in some aspect of sports. Whether you're an athlete, if you couldn't go as far to become a pro athlete, get into the organizational aspect, get to the broadcast booth, whatever it may be. Follow where your strengths sit. I mean, that's one thing we're always preached to do is to try to strengthen your weaknesses and to find balance. But we're not really balanced as human beings. You got to run
No.
with what you got to run with where you have your utmost talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're here. And the Pirate Broadcast is Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Arizona time, wherever you happen to be. We don't have daylight savings time here. So it's like, I'll let you figure it out, the math. So, and also we can be found on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel because it's a great place, and I expect for that to grow as well and expand. I just launched a podcast, and it's on Facebook Live. And so if you find it here on LinkedIn and you want to go elsewhere, you can. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my jam, and I just love connecting with people on LinkedIn like Rob. And so, Rob, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your gifts and
Thank
your
you.
mission.
You know what? Thank you. I'm very humbled and very honored to be here. I think you got something great going on here, the Pirate Broadcast. Russ, you do a great job with the show. Thank you very much, and thank you to all those that tuned in.
Yeah, thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
taking the time, and time's your most precious asset. Thank you.
Yeah. And as I always say, kindness is cool, smiles are free, and you enjoy the day.
Have a great day, everyone.